The Golden Stallion, the man of tomorrow, Sabzu, the rated R radio star, here, but once again, not alone. I am joined by the one and only, the lovely and hyper-intelligent Dr. Stephanie Murphy.
Woo!
Woo!
You're never alone, Brian. It's
That's
like
right.
the opposite of that forever alone meme. It's like never alone. And the Golden Stallion and the Doctor get together.
I love it. So, and we're actually together for... well, we had fun a little while ago doing a show called, I ended up naming it the Relationship Rhombus
Yeah,
Show.
that was fun. I like that.
And so I was like, you know what, let's do another one. And this is for patrons, for Sovryn Tech Patrons only. And
See, you get so many perks being a patron.
I tell you do. And so I got together some questions, asked people in the Sovryn Tech Facebook group, which we'll see how much longer that exists, at the rate things are going. But I talked about that, of course, in episode 244 that just got released this Saturday. But, I got, some questions came in through that. Some questions came in through the patrons. Other questions came in, like I said, right in that group. It's something fun to do. And we've got a lot of questions to get to. I don't know if we're going to get to all of them. Some of them I've compressed because...
Good call. Good move. Yeah.
Yeah. Because they could be a little lengthy, but I made sure to get all the pertinent information in there. And if there are any questions, I, of course, can just reference back to the original question and then we can get into it. So anyway, let's, why don't we just break right into it?
Yeah.
Since I think
we've
got some plans for tonight. Actually, we're recording this on September
STD
24th.
Day.
It's STD Day.
Which is, of course, Star Trek Discovery.
That's right. and honestly, folks, like I get the joke and it's funny, but the technical term now is STI. It's not STD anymore.
Yeah, that's right. It's a sexually transmitted infection because disease sounds like a stigma, like you'll never get rid of it. And some of them, you will never get rid of it with your technology. They're incurable, but some of them are just infections that can be cured with antibiotics.
Right. So
or
maybe,
by your own immune system.
There you go. So maybe you learned something today. Also, I mean, there's been plenty of jokes going on around that. It's like, all right, well, how are they actually going to abbreviate the show name? Is it going to be DIS? Like DIS, for Discovery? But it's going to be DSC. That was declared a long time ago. So anyway, but the jokes are funny. I get it. But, so we're all set to do that, but we're going to get in some nature before we take in the future later tonight, I think.
That's right.
But anyway, let's get into these questions. Let's do this because we do have such a busy day ahead of us. All right, let's see. Well, I don't want to, a couple of these questions are a little on the depressing side. I don't know if I want to start off with that. You know what I mean? They're important. They need to be answered. They need, they're great questions, but we don't need to start off with that. All right,
let's start off with a fun one then.
All right. Well, here's a good one. Are there any apps besides Signal that you'd recommend for sexting?
Oh, that is a good question.
Kind of a technical question, which is good since this is a tech show generally, but it's also tech and science. So, and there's plenty of sex sprinkled in. But do you have any initial thoughts on this, or do you want me to just take it?
Yeah, my first thought is it depends on what you're afraid of, like bad happening from sexting.
Okay, do you have examples?
Yeah. So you might be afraid that the government is reading your text messages. In that case, Signal is your best bet.
Right.
But if they really want to read your text messages, nothing can stop them.
Yep. Spoken like a real
like you always say,
yeah.
Brian. So that's one thing. Now, if you're afraid that at some point you might break up with the person you're sexting, and they might put your nude photos on a revenge porn site, or they might share screenshots of intimate things that you've said with their friends and laugh at you, there's really nothing you can do about that either. Even with Signal, you can download apps that let you take screenshots. Like, basically, you can never stop somebody from screenshotting your shit.
Or just having a second camera and taking a picture of it.
Yep, that's right.
Even if you figured out some kind of software solution to to stop screenshotting from happening on a phone or device or whatever, you can't stop it. You just need another camera.
Now, if you're sexting someone that you're having an affair with, and perhaps their partner snooping might be a concern. I'm not going to say anything about the ethics of that, but some people are worried about that.
Sure.
Well, it's really up to your partner to have security measures in place on their phone so that snoops don't read it. So, for example, you set your phone to not show the text of an incoming message on the lock screen. Right. And you would put a pin on your phone, right?
Right.
Not a fingerprint.
Or even on the app. The Signal app can do both.
Yep, that's right. So, yeah, I mean, if you're afraid that somebody is snooping on your phone, it could even be your mom or something. Like, say you're a teenager and you think your parents are snooping on your phone.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, put a pin on your apps and then they won't see it. Problem solved.
Yeah, right.
Or, just get together in person and whisper it in your partner's ear.
Yeah.
So, and I think those are all valid concerns when people sext each other. I know that I have all those concerns.
Sure.
Somebody's going to snoop and read it, or we're going to break up at some point and they're going to laugh at me and they're going to expose my vulnerable shit that was only meant for their eyes.
Right.
I have all those concerns. And it definitely stops me from sending a lot of stuff that I might otherwise send if I wasn't afraid of those things.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, is there any besides Signal? Is there a particular app you would consider using?
Oh Lord.
Dark Lord. If not, that's okay. I can start answering.
Honestly, I use Facebook Messenger to flirt. I know that's really bad. I probably shouldn't be admitting that, but I use Facebook.
Who are you flirting with?
You! I mean, I say shit on Facebook Messenger, and I really just don't send things because I know that it could potentially be leaked or exposed or something like that. And so I just don't send anything that I would die of embarrassment if it got out there.
Sure.
And maybe that's not a good way to live your life, though. I'm reflecting on that, and I'm like, maybe I shouldn't be so uptight about it. Maybe I should just let more stuff out there. But I tend to just not care about the app so much because any app can be compromised.
Yes.
The security is only as good as the weakest link in the chain, and that could be you, or it could be the other person that you're sexting, or it could be the person that hacks into their account or whatever. I guess I just self-censor a lot. And I don't know if that's good.
Right. Sure. Well, I mean, but that's an interesting point that you bring up is that you're self-censoring. This is a byproduct of a surveillance society. And it's not a good thing I think self-censoring is making you second guess yourself. It's creating stress. It does a lot of, it's a genuine, I mean, I guess I could see the argument where there's times where it's a good thing, if you're, depending on what your goals are. But in the abstract, it's not a good thing because you really don't have a choice. Like you're automatically self-censoring. And I don't think that that's okay. It's not like something you're willfully wanting to do necessarily. So, yeah. There's another question that's kind of related to this that we'll get into a little bit later. I mean, yeah, you and I have used Facebook Messenger and shared some things. Mm-hmm. And we talked about this. I think it wasn't the last time you were on Sovryn Tech, but one time you were on Sovryn Tech, we were talking about this, how you take, you don't include your head in the shot.
For nudes.
Yeah. Like if you're sending nudes, or I mean, like that's a possibility. Maybe you do want the head in the shot. I don't know. Like that could be just as important. I guess,
some
in a
people
way.
don't care. I mean,
right. And that's fine. That's fine too. But Signal,
even if your head's not in the shot, I mean, it could. Well, I guess don't choose people to date who are likely to be assholes who would do something like post your nude pics on a revenge porn site after you break up.
Yeah,
that's start number one.
Right. I mean, if you're if you're a person that's okay with nude pictures of you being online, well, then none of this matters.
Right. The other attitude is just don't care.
Yeah.
Like, okay, if my ex posts pictures of me somewhere or shares it with somebody else who I didn't intend it for, so what? Who cares? I'm empowered by it.
Sure. It's totally valid. I mean, like there's this, I mean, honestly, me, and granted, guys have a lot less skin in this game, no pun intended, than women do, I think. But like if there were nude pictures of me online, I wouldn't give a shit. Hell, I'd probably link to them. It's like, fine, whatever, I mean, I just like, I don't, it doesn't affect me. Yeah. But I know that that's not true for everybody, and certain like that it doesn't affect them, and it's important to be respectful of that, and certainly understand where women, like you say often, Stephanie, dick is abundant and low value. Well, women are not, and so
women are high. The pictures of women are higher value, and also they're judged a lot more. Mm-hmm. They're harassed. Women get a lot more harassment.
Yeah, they can be used in incredibly detrimental ways.
Right. Like I sort of feel like it's all well and good to say, oh yeah, I don't care, whatever. Yeah. Who cares if anybody sees me naked? But as a woman, you do get a lot more harassment, especially if you're hot or if you're not conventionally hot.
Sure.
They will judge the shit out of you. They'll shame you. Like, even the most thick-skinned person is going to catch a lot of shit for it when a nude photo is released of them that they didn't intend to be released.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's really important to have trust, more so than the app that you're using. It's important, I think, to trust the person that you're sending this stuff to. Don't be willy-nilly with this shit, right? But as far as apps outside of Signal that I'd recommend, maybe Telegram. Again, if you're talking about trying to thwart like government actors, just get that out of your head. Like, that's not happening. Okay, get over that. If you're like really being watched by the government or something, you know. But
you're probably not.
Right. The main features you want to be looking for is, can I lock the app, which you can download apps onto, say, a mobile device that will allow you to lock any app, whether the app has the native feature or not. The other thing is, can it send timed messages, as in they can disappear after a little while? Or can you delete remotely on both sides? Now, like with Facebook, you can delete it on your side. You know what
but
you
it doesn't
wrote.
delete it on Facebook servers or the other person's side.
Exactly.
So I don't know what the point of that is, except to stage a screenshot.
Yeah,
where it looks like you didn't say something.
Yeah, very weird. But with Signal or like Telegram and some others, they do let you delete it both ways. So that's a handy thing, you know, to feature to have. So maybe I'd use Telegram. Maybe I'd use, like, Line has a lot of these features, but that's not very popular. Facebook Messenger, well, I mean, everybody's on it. And I mean, honestly, if there was ever like a real leak of Facebook data, like, the whole world would be fucked, you know, in conventional sense, the whole world would be fucked. So, you know, and this is something I've talked about a lot recently, is that you really are kind of picking and choosing right now in the world that we live in the past few years. Okay, what tech giant do I trust? Mm-hmm. And you pick one or two, and in my opinion, you stick with that. Now, that's a practical solution, you know. Perfect world, no, you don't trust any of them. Mm-hmm. But most people aren't at the technical level, or they want to do things that make that possibility anathema. So, yeah, you trust Facebook? Okay, then you trust
Skype is another
Facebook.
one.
Yeah. Microsoft's got to solve this at some point. They have so many problems with Skype. The fact that they went cloud with it, they really could be encrypting that shit, and they don't. You know, Microsoft is one of those companies where, you know, to answer that question of which tech giant do I trust, Microsoft's one of the ones where I've kind of put my eggs of my, you know, in their basket.
Yeah, but you're still paranoid about people recording Skype calls. You say you don't say anything personal on Skype.
No, yeah, absolutely not. Yeah, that's a great, yeah. So there's so much software developed for Skype, particularly designed to record what gets said on there. Yeah, no way. I absolutely will not reveal personal information on that, because, especially in the Liberty movement, because this is a movement that I think a lot of people, and this is something to be concerned about. In fact, I'm glad you brought this up, because I think this is something that the place where I would trust people the least is perhaps in the liberty and anarchist movement. They
have a historical record of doing the Scientology tactic where, mm-hmm. Especially within certain circles, and that's all I'm really going to say, but you know, it's a tactic to get people to admit vulnerable stuff about their past history and their traumas, perhaps, and triggers, and just personal shit that you wouldn't want everyone on the internet to know necessarily. Right. And surreptitiously recording those conversations and pulling them out at a later time, or just bringing up what was said in those conversations and saying basically, you know, well, like, if you leave, we'll out you or whatever, or if you do using them as a point of blackmail or manipulation.
Yeah, there's blackmail. And look, one of the primary texts in anarcho-capitalism, Defending the Undefendable, says how blackmail's okay. I mean,
Does it really? I don't remember that part.
Well, I mean, he's like defending almost the concept of blackmail in it. It's a very creepy little book. But anyway, yeah, so in the Liberty movement, I mean, and you've seen case after case after case where somebody's nudes were leaked by people in the liberty movement
yeah.
that supposedly were like upstanding individuals and all this shit.
Well, supposedly that care about consent.
Right.
And that care about non-aggression or whatever.
Yeah.
And yeah, just demonstrate the rapiest attitudes toward women that you could possibly imagine.
Yeah. So
it's like the nap doesn't apply to women.
Right. Right. So it's an odd thing. I mean, to say this, but, and I know it's a strong statement, but honestly, I wouldn't share like nudes or a lot of that kind of shit with people that are certainly prominent in the liberty movement. But maybe even people in general. I don't know. Cause there's this very odd attitude that exists. I mean, where, yeah, I don't know. Consent doesn't seem to be a part of it. Voluntary interaction doesn't necessarily seem to be. I mean, it's just, it's all very fucking weird. So yeah, I would be very cautious. And yeah, I don't talk to.
I think that goes on, to be fair, like we don't have a lot of personal experience with this, but
sure.
Honestly, I hear stories of it going on in leftist circles, like far leftist circles as well. Just tons of abuse and in communities where supposedly people are identifying as feminists, but they're actually rapists and stuff like that. And even like other prominent feminists like defend these rapists and things like that. I've heard of that happening so many times. It's not just the liberty community. That's just the one that we have seen firsthand. But the point is, it's hard to trust people in any capacity.
Yeah.
So.
No, you're right. It can happen anywhere. You're right. But I bring that up because I think that there are a lot of people who get this automatic assumption that, oh, it's the liberty movement, so I can trust these people. I should bring these people on.
Replace liberty movement with, it's my church. I can trust these people.
Yeah, right.
It's my synagogue. I can trust these people. It's my town that I grew up in. I can trust these people. Well, no, you can't.
Yeah, I mean, adaptation or application, personal application of an ideology is no guarantee of virtue.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just
or
not.
a community, being part of a community.
Right.
Doesn't mean you're good.
Yeah, exactly.
Or that the community has vetted the person either. Right.
That's the point I want to drive home. But definitely I will say be very careful when talking to people in the liberty movement, about very personal stuff, because they may not tell you that they're recording it. And I get it. I mean, this is like, these are people who don't like to tell cops that they're recording them. And like, there's kind of this attitude around there that I don't know, what's behind it necessarily, but anyway, whatever. That's, we spent a really long time on that question that I didn't expect. Let's move on to another one if you're all set.
Basically, what app do we recommend for sexting? I recommend a really cool app. It's been around since before smartphones. It's called Whispering in Your Partner's Ear, where there are no microphones, like in the middle of the woods.
Yeah, come together, live together, and then you can feel.
Well, if you're in a long distance relationship, it's hard to do that. I understand, but
yeah,
if you're truly in a long distance relationship and you can't see your partner in person, I would recommend just basically use any app or any mode of communication, but don't put anything out there that you would literally, like, your life would be ruined if it got out.
Yeah. Have a lot of trust, or you engender a lot of trust in, in what you're doing there. So, yeah. So,
and don't date assholes.
Yeah. Don't date assholes. So like I said, Signal, maybe Telegram, those are ones that sort of have that feature set, but even then, just be very, very careful, when doing that sort of thing. Okay, so let's get into, let's see, what is it?
You and I are both on the Paranoid Kook dating program.
Well, I'll tell you, I mean, and there's a question that'll get into this a bit. I mean, like, you could use IRC. IRC is a phenomenal, I mean, because then you could be anonymous, and there's a lot of different things that you could do, and you could hook up, and at least then maybe you could, especially if you want to get into like heavy duty sexting where it turns more into like cybersex or something, maybe then you could have plausible deny, or you could, I want to say
you just use a pseudonym.
Yeah. But you could say, no, really, that wasn't me. I mean, like there's options. So anyway, in fact, let's build right off of that. How about it? With this other question here, I've recently been inspired by Brian's constant promotion of cybersex. Do you have any recommendations for quote unquote good cybersex? Like, what are the practices, I guess?
Oh, you're so happy that someone asked you that question.
I love it.
Brian, I'll float this idea. I hope I'm not blowing your cover. You can delete it.
No, that's all right.
Brian has toyed with the idea of writing a book about cybersex.
I was going to mention it myself, so I'm glad you did.
Yeah. Okay, so what are my recommendations for good cybersex?
Yeah.
I would say start by developing a foundation. And like if you're too young to have grown up in the era where there was cybersex, like if you didn't have the internet if you weren't I would say like in your late teens or early 20s, at least in the 90s when the internet was becoming more prevalent, you probably missed that era of really classic cybersex. If you've never been on a news group or Usenet, you may have missed your time.
Or IRC or something, yeah.
Yeah, and if you grew up when the tool of sexting was Facebook and not AIM, then those all might be signs that you're a young millennial and you missed it. You missed the window of opportunity. And I'm not really. I'm saying that sort of half in jest. Like your experience of cybersex will be different than mine and Brian's, but it doesn't mean it's invalid or anything.
Right.
I just think that in those earlier days of the internet, people had to be a little bit more creative. First of all, everything was done with a screen name. You never did anything with your real name. And
no, it was very much a Wild West.
Yeah. And so everybody got a little bit more uninhibited because they weren't necessarily using their real name. Hell, it's like a famous thing where people pretended to be somebody else entirely, where like, old men would pose as lesbians and things like that.
Oh, sure.
Like, cis lesbians and stuff. Or they would just try on a new identity. They'd say they're from a different city or a different age or something like that. Of course, that can get creepy. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. But you could do that in those days. Let
me just say quickly, that was like, understand, this wasn't seen as a bad thing. This was considered a feature at the time. There's a famous America Online advertisement from back then where this like Asian guy says on it, I like America Online because it allows me to be somebody that I'm not. And it sounds creepy when you hear it and everything, right? But I mean, but America Online said, oh, no, this is a good thing. I mean, so this was like, and most people didn't even pay any attention to it except for me, but that's because I come from like, a different mindset. But anyway, but point being is that understand that while you might think that sounds creepy, no, this was considered a great thing. This was one of the new ventures.
I would say that back then there was an actual culture of not having a surveillance society.
Sure.
Or there wasn't the culture of a surveillance society being a good thing. There were people who still valued privacy. There was no social media.
Right.
There was no government tracking. And there weren't really either like easily accessible chat logs either. Or screenshots weren't.
Yeah, unless you're doing IRC, then you had.
There weren't like everything wasn't archived in some server farm of the NSA somewhere. The NSA didn't even exist yet.
Yeah, because at the time most technologies were still like store and forward, and it was very different.
Yeah, I mean, so if you had cybersex chats in the 90s, unless you have logs of them somewhere and you saved it and backed it up for 20 fucking years, 30 years, it's gone.
Yeah.
And so all of those things come together, just the lack of surveillance technology and the lack of surveillance mindset, and people valuing privacy, thinking that it's not necessarily a bad thing to want to try on a different identity or to have a pseudonym or something like that,
sure,
or to have an online persona or an online handle that was different than your real life persona. All that came together, I think, and created an atmosphere where you could be a lot more uninhibited and you felt comfortable doing so.
Yeah.
So that was the culture of those times. And I think that led to a lot of crazy cybersex because people felt that they could do it without, without stigma, shame, and negative consequences.
Sure.
Now, at the time, there was, on a political level, an obscenity crackdown going on. There were a lot of politicians who were very concerned about the internet and exposing people to pornography, and pornography creates all this bad stuff in society. And, the Justice Department went on these crusades against porn producers.
Yes.
And they would do sting operations where they would mail order a porn video to be delivered to like some conservative county in like Salt Lake City or Texas. And then they would take it to a jury trial and try to get the porn companies for like shipping the porn across state lines and call it obscenity.
Right.
And so this was going on politically, but I think most people were like, hey, wait a minute, sex isn't bad. You know?
Yeah.
Some of them for the first time in their lives if they were older. So like, yeah, that was just, it was a different time than it is now. You know, now you can get internet porn as easily as snapping your fingers. You know, it's super easy to get porn.
Sure.
They've lost the battle on obscenity and pornography utterly. The war on porn, it was a dismal failure. But yet, you can't necessarily even, it's a lot harder to try on that uninhibited chat, you know?
Yeah.
And just chat with a stranger. We have things like chat roulette now, where you can just chat with a random person. I'm sure there's a lot of creepy sexual shit that goes on there.
Sure.
And great sexual shit too. But yeah, it's just different times. So how do you have great cyber sex? I would say first you have to have the setup to be creative and to feel safe and uninhibited. And that's what I was talking about with the culture of the early internet.
Okay.
That it created that space for you to feel safe exploring sexual fantasies and stuff like that.
Well, I think, yeah. But an important thing that, because I feel like this stands in contrast to trust, but it sort of doesn't. I think having your mind, like at the time, you know, when in the 90s, when I was engaged in it pretty heavily, you just sort of kind of figured, well, you know, the person I might be doing this with actually might be a dude. Like it's saying it's a woman, but it really might be a dude.
Yeah, but does that even matter? Because in your mind, what do you know? Like, what difference does it make to you?
Generally, it actually really doesn't matter unless it turns into an actual relationship.
Right.
Then you know. But I mean, not that they need to tell you. Not that I'm not saying anything of that sort. I'm just saying that it helps if you go into it knowing that like if you're doing this kind of random and it's not just, I mean, I think so as I understand it, people have told me cybersex is still a thing today, but a lot of people do it. They know exactly who they're doing it with.
Yeah,
okay,
exactly. They're texting someone that they've already met or that they're,
right.
Yeah, from Tinder or something like that.
Right. So, but that's what I'm saying is that if you're looking to get into it now, and if you're looking to do it kind of random or with people on, I don't know what venue you're using, understand that there's the chance that if you're a guy, you know, wanting to stoop cyber stoop a gal, it might not really be a gal.
Yeah.
You know, and that I'm just putting that out there.
People get catfished all the time on dating sites. And
sure.
That's always a risk you take. Sure. So I guess not much has changed there necessarily.
Right.
But okay, in order to have good cyber sex, I think we have to analyze a little bit what is wrong with cyber sex today most of the time.
Okay.
And from my perspective, what I see is a lot of usually guys trying to initiate cyber sex with a woman in a way that does not interest her at all. For example, they'll send a dick pic and they'll say like,
yep.
You like this, or you want to suck on this, or something like that. Guys, there's nothing less interesting to a woman than just a dick pic with no context behind it, nothing that explains why that dick is special, why she should want to suck on it or fuck it or anything like that.
Yeah.
There is no bigger turnoff. And especially when it comes like unsolicited or without asking, it's almost like a violation. It's very rude. Mm-hmm. And I guess, you know, some guys maybe even get turned on by that, or they would be turned on if a woman saw a picture of their dick and that's all she needed, and she became incredibly turned on by that. But that's for most people. For most women, they don't work like that. That's fantasy. Right. Now, the opposite, if a woman sends a guy a picture of her tits or pussy or something like that, the guy be like, hey, come over, you know? For most guys, that would work for them. So they're just doing what they think would work. They're just basically treating others like they would want to be treated. You know, so it's not necessarily they're trying to be an asshole or anything. It's just that that's what would work for them. And so they're trying to put it out there in hopes that they'll get it back. But most women don't work like that. Anyway, so this is all very heteronormative, but I'm just going to go with it. Okay. So what's wrong with cybersex is that a lot of times it's crude, it's not creative, it's not interesting, it's not new and different, it's riddled with grammatical mistakes. It's
you're hitting on a big one right there.
Yeah, and it's just not there's no mystery about it. There's nothing intriguing. And for someone whose cybersex tastes are a little more refined, you almost need to build like an erotic story read some erotica. That'll get you started.
Mm-hmm.
Read some good erotica, I should say.
Yeah.
Good erotica where most of the story is not about the actual sex acts. It's about the build up to them. It's about the teasing. It's about the context or the plot behind the sex. And you'll see what I mean. Because what you want to do is build up a tease. You want to build up a tease with cybersex.
Yeah.
That makes the other person beg for more. They want more information.
Yeah, I mean, you don't start the cybersex session with "I put my dick in you." You know?
Exactly.
Especially with the "you" being just the letter U.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, like you might. How would you open it? Well, you might ask a question. What color are your panties today? Something like that. I mean, you might want to be.
That's a good one.
You might want to. You might want to have a little rapport with the person before that and just see if they're even interested in cybering with you. But, something like, what color panties are you wearing today? I would much prefer to receive that message from someone I was sexually interested in than a dick pic and say, what time can you come over? Or something like that.
Yeah.
Asking questions is a great way to chat with someone on a dating site, cybersex, any romantic context,
real life. Yeah.
Flirting.
Sure.
Asking questions is a great way to get a conversation going. People love to talk about themselves. They love to be asked questions. And it gives them something to talk about so that they don't have to try to keep the conversation going. They just answer the question. It's very easy. Right?
Yeah.
So you want to do that. So ask a tasteful but suggestive question like that. Hey, do you like massages? Something like that. Would you like to get a massage right now? Yeah, that's something you could ask like in person, I guess, if you're trying to start some sex with somebody. Hey, can I give you a back massage?
Yeah, right. No, that's good.
Right. So yeah, I mean, don't make it too overtly pornographic. Keep it a little bit mysterious. Keep the words like cock and like that's more hardcore.
Unless
maybe that'll come out later in the conversation,
exactly.
But at the beginning to start it off, you don't want to be leading with that.
Yeah, I think all of that's great advice. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, so when I was more heavily engaged in this sort of thing, I like to. I mean, I would. And generally it would be with somebody, usually it'd be with somebody that I already had like a real rapport with and maybe was already friends with or something like that. And, then we'd have fun doing this sort of thing. And there's a few things today that I think make it a little bit inefficient. Like let me explain first how I would go about it in my preferred way is beforehand, you would set up, I mean, it'd be full role play. Who's doing what? Who's playing what universe are we in? I mean,
so you would discuss like a scene.
Oh,
It
yeah.
would be like a BDSM scene where you lay it out.
Right. And I would generally do this on IRC. So there would be like a text that, so like I said, I was using IRC. So there would be like, I would keep logs and so would she. Everybody involved usually would because they'd love to read this back. Because how you do it is we'd almost write it like a novel, like we were kind of finishing each other's sentences in a way.
Yeah, like that writing technique where you start off with one sentence and the other person finishes a few more sentences and then you pass it back and forth.
Right. So because this would be like something that could be consumed later, which is a very nice thing for cybersex. Yeah. At the beginning, like I would write kind of almost like a little intro, 2-3 sentences, something like that of what's happening, where they're at, what's going on, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Then the nice thing about IRC was you could type in the /me command at the beginning, which would make the text say, Brian Sovryn does this.
Yeah.
Instead of me typing it out and it just like showing up at my name, like it would make it look like, and there'd be some color coding at all. I mean, it would really create this very interesting environment where you could differentiate what's going on, who's doing what. People would have different colored names. So, even though you can't hear voices, right? You're seeing who's talking, and it's a very quick verbal cue because hell, maybe you want to jerk off while you're writing this, or you want to rub one out, if you're a gal, whatever. Okay. So, that's the way I always liked doing it. And I think, I mean, the problem there is, look, not everybody's a great writer. I'm not saying I'm a great writer. I should just say not everybody's a writer. And so that can be a challenge for what I consider to be really good cybersex, is where you're writing it like a story, and it all comes out that way. And again, it sucks because a lot of these, you can't go back and read them as nicely as you could on IRC. Like it's really, I think there's a real disadvantage, and I wish that technology still had a lot more prominence. It's still out there. You can still use it, but, anyway, and you know what else was nice about with IRC was that if you wanted to, you could inside of a chat room in IRC, you could do a private message with people, with people that are in the group, in the chat room with you. And so then you could like plan out, all right, but let's do this, because you'd plan it out, but you'd still have some things that are, or you'd have a lot of things that are
like
random.
An outline to a story.
Yeah, and creative and all that. So you're just running off of an outline pretty much. And I think that's a great way to go. Now, I want to mention this. If you want me to delete it, we'll just stop and I'll cut it now. Okay, but but you and I, like the first time we sort of did something was actually on Facebook Messenger.
I think we were SMS texting each other.
No, well, okay, there were those. That was sexting.
Well, I know the one you're talking about on Facebook, too.
Yeah, I'm talking about cybersex. And you really liked it.
Yeah, I liked it.
And can I describe a little bit of what it was? It was like, it was a cave thing, right? I mean, it was like around the fire, wearing skins, the whole thing. And I remember at the end of it, you're like, wow, that was really...
Oh yeah, I definitely had an orgasm.
Yeah. I think you said you're like at the kitchen table or something.
I totally was. I remember that well.
Yeah. So, but that's the thing is that like, when I hear that sort of thing, I'm like, all right, yeah, that was good cybersex, right? I mean, like that's a great reaction to have. Mm-hmm. So but I want to reiterate what you mentioned earlier about starting off slow and not just like starting off with, I put my dick in you, and like that kind of bullshit. So I remember one in particular. This was somewhat of a similar situation where it was a gal that I had yet to actually meet in person, but she wanted to, try rocking out the whole cybersex thing. And we had done it a few times. This was in the 90s. Okay. And I was, I don't know, 18, shy of 18, maybe something like that. Anyway. So we, I set up this scenario where it was like, it was almost like a Catholic, girls' school or something. And I was sneaking into, consensually, there's no,
that's awesome.
Yeah. And I was sneaking into her room. And the thing is I played it out really slow where, starting off with describing kissing, slowly unbuttoning the shirt. But this all took, and look, a good cybersex session, how long can it go? It can go for hours.
Oh yeah.
It can go absolutely for hours. Mm-hmm. And you could be coming multiple times, during this whole thing, but it was all very slow. And at the end of it, and we were playing it out as if we were virgins, in this cybersex thing. Yeah.
Cool. At
the end of it, she said, "Oh my God, this is the first time I've ever had cybersex where like, I really want to fuck the person after the fact." And of course,
nice.
Later, a couple months later, we ended up doing just that. But regardless, that slow play really, really set things up because, it's a nice warm up. It gets things going and it helps you set the scene. And there's stuff that you can even like reference back to. Cybersex is such a powerful thing. I talk about it a lot, and that's what the person had commented.
Yeah, it shows off. You know what else it does? It really shows your lover that you have creativity.
Yeah, that brain
you're
plumage.
Capable of pacing yourself.
Yeah.
That you're intelligent and you care about things like grammar and communication.
Grammar's sexy. Let's call it straight.
No,
grammar,
it really
vocabulary is sexy.
I have a similar story, Brian, actually.
Please.
There was somebody that I knew that I used to go to that I met at the gym. So I thought of him as pretty much a meathead. Mm-hmm. He was like a jock kind of guy.
Sure.
And at that time in my life, I had just gotten a great body from working out for the first time, and I had never had attention from jocks before, and I thought that was kind of cool. I wanted it. So this guy, eventually I moved to New Hampshire. I never really dated him, but he was texting me a little bit. One time he sends me a text, "Send me a picture of your pussy." I just ignored it. I'm like,
wow.
No. Like,
What
that's
the fuck?
that's not interesting at all. I think I just said, like, you're going to have to do more than that, or something like that. You're going to have to put in more work than that.
Do better.
So then a couple weeks later, he sends me another text, and I was in medical school at the time, okay? He sends me another text. Hey, like my heart is beating kind of fast, I noticed. I think I need a checkup. Would you be willing to help me with that? And then we had like a great cybersex session about like pretending to be a doctor and a patient.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was great. I never ended up meeting him though. And that's fine.
Sure. Yeah, fair.
But anyway, yeah, so it can go either way.
Yeah.
And the approach that you start out with makes a big difference.
Yeah, so I think how we could boil this down, what makes for good cybersex is creativity,
Yeah.
grammar, vocabulary, make sure you're using the right technology, right app, or
Yeah.
whatever.
Know your audience too. I mean, not everybody needs it to be super highbrow.
No.
But don't blow your load in the first text.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But pacing, that is going to be my next one, is just, go take it slow. Go with the pacing.
It's a
and
tease.
everything.
It's like a burlesque art.
Yeah. I like that. Okay. All right.
It's all about the tease.
So that
beg for it.
That's right. That makes for great cybersex. And be creative. Like, that's one of the best things about cybersex is like you can do the things that are just completely impossible, and you can come up with such wild shit.
Centaurs, no problem.
Yeah, and I didn't even get into like
kidding.
Yeah, right. Well, sure, what the hell? Hell, I did one where there were like Kilrathi in it, and that's like a cat species from Wing Commander. I know, right? And that, in fact, to this day, it's still the hottest one in my mind. I mean, like there was like breast expansion and there's all kinds of other wild shit. I mean, you can go nuts. Anyway, so I was going to say, so chatbots. Now, this requires a ton of technical knowledge. But this is something that I think you could do on Telegram or on IRC just really quickly, where you could set up chatbots that react to certain commands and could do who knows what. You could create other people involved. Of course, if you're writing it out like a novel, each of you could play multiple parts if you wanted to. And that can be a lot of fun too. So that's another one of those advantages to cybersex is you don't need a room full of people. You could create them yourselves. And it can be very hot. So anyway, there you go. Let's move on to another question, shall we?
Yes.
Let's get into, let's take one of the downers here, or not downers, just very serious ones. So what's the best way to fix sexual issues that stem from rape and abuse and impact your libido?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, first of all, my heart goes out to you for what you experienced.
To anyone
it's
that this
not fair.
is relative to. Yeah.
Sexual trauma is so common. I mean, not everybody has it, but almost everybody has it to one degree or another.
Sure.
Some people have it a lot worse than others, for sure. But it's way more common than it should be. And it is a real thing that affects a lot of people's sex lives and libidos. Especially when they haven't dealt with it. Mm-hmm. So congratulations to you, the person who wrote that question, because it sounds like you're becoming aware of how your trauma is affecting you. Yeah. Which is something that a first step that a lot of people never take. Yeah. And you're proactively looking for ways to heal from it. And that's how you get there. I mean, you got the right mindset to be healing. So, what is the best way to get rid of it? There is no best way for everybody. There is no one size fits all way. There are a lot of great books about surviving sexual trauma and reclaiming your sex life. Yeah. The Survivor's Handbook is one. Yep. From Cleus Press. I'm sorry, I don't remember the author of it. There's lots of books. There's books on different topics too. Like some people write books about. Well, actually, you may be interested in books like The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. Yep, fantastic book. Which is about how trauma of all kinds, including sexual trauma, is stored in the body. And your muscles and your nerves kind of remember it, and your brain remembers it because trauma affects the brain. It makes the fear and fight or flight kind of responses grow bigger. Mm-hmm. Parts of your brain get literally rewired to respond to that trauma, and you can carry those responses with you as a reflex for the rest of your life unless you take some active steps to kind of tone down that response, knowing that now there's no danger that you were facing at one time in the past. So I would recommend reading just about trauma in general. There's this idea that, in yoga, they say the issues are in the tissues.
Yep.
And I
Great
love
saying.
that saying. I don't know where exactly it comes from, but it's so true. That almost goes along with the book, The Body Keeps the Score.
Yeah.
Where, like some trauma that we experience, especially trauma that we experience before we have words, before we can speak and verbalize what we're feeling. So like very early on in life that we might not even consciously remember. Those memories are stored in our bodies, and we can't really process them through therapy because therapy involves talking and words.
Yeah.
And some memories are more stored in the form of smells, sights, feelings, they're more experiential. And so in order to access those memories, you can't use verbal language because that's just not going to get down deep enough. And so you have to do physical stuff like yoga, yoga therapy or art therapy. Sometimes you can draw stuff. That might be something that helps for some people. I know with some people who experience, and of course there's all kinds of sexual trauma. So some of the common ones are, rape, obviously. You can be raped at any age, so it's different. Everybody experiences it differently. Every survivor experiences it differently, but there's especially differences when it occurs at different ages,
Right.
Before, after puberty. Was there incest involved? Was it somebody you trusted? Obviously it's a violation of trust, but was it like somebody you went on a first date with, or was it a priest, So there's different levels involved. What else? Incest, that's another one.
Sure.
And I'm saying these, like, I know it makes people uncomfortable to sort of name them out loud, but sometimes that can be really important for people to heal, is to have their trauma named and brought out into the light and talked about in public.
Yeah.
And to make it a thing that no longer has power over you, a thing that can be discussed openly.
Yeah.
So sometimes talking about it out loud really helps. Maybe, I don't know if this person has been to a therapist, but that can help sometimes too, to have somebody be that, what is it called? Just that empathetic listener, the person who's always on your side. I think Alice Miller called it like the empathetic witness, like someone to witness what you experienced from a compassionate perspective and to just listen to you about it.
Right.
And sometimes that can be very helpful. Of course, if you have a sexual partner, if you're in a relationship, like for example, if you're married, your partner may know all about your trauma and history. Your partner may not know because maybe you've never told your partner. Mm-hmm. And so I think communicating about it with your partner is a good idea. That can be hard for some people to do, especially when it's a new relationship.
Yeah.
Oh, another type of sexual trauma that some people have is loss of a spouse or partner. What happens if your partner or spouse dies?
Sure.
Even someone you were just dating. That, people do die, and sometimes they're in relationships, and that really breaks your heart. So do you tell your new partner who you've went out on 2 dates with that, hey, my husband died, or my wife died, or my girlfriend or boyfriend before you died? Some people don't want to talk about that right away. They're afraid they'll scare the other person off. So, communication about it with your partner, if that's something you feel comfortable with. Your partner has a role to play in, if you have certain things that maybe you've worked on addressing your trauma, but you just cannot go there for some reason. Like, for example, if you are triggered by certain BDSM, like being tied up or something like that, or if it's certain sex acts, like oral sex, something like that. Maybe you just say to your partner, you know what? No matter how much I work on this, it's just never going to be okay for me to do that specific thing. So let's just avoid doing that.
Yeah.
And, hopefully your partner will be respectful of that and understand why. Some people use BDSM and role play as a way of healing from trauma.
It's almost therapeutic.
Yeah. It can be therapeutic to sort of reenact a scene, I guess. Now, and again, this is something that I don't have a lot of personal experience with. And so I'm trying my best to get into somebody else's shoes just from interviews that I've heard and things like that. and describe what they experience, but I might not be doing the best job. But from what I understand, some people like to reenact their trauma in a controlled way where they're in charge of what happens.
Yeah. And
they can make it different, the outcome different this time.
Yeah.
Because they're actually in control of the situation. So some people find that therapeutic. Some people criticize that and say, well, how does it actually help if you're reenacting your trauma? Well, maybe it helps because it's different this time. Because the outcome is different.
In your mind,
and you're in control.
Yeah, it changes the outcome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So some people heal that way. Again, there's no one best way. It depends on the type of trauma you experienced, the age that you were, how many times it happened to you, what your symptoms are, like how it's affecting you now, what your current situation is with relationships.
Yeah.
Do you have any triggers? How often do you get exposed to those triggers? Sometimes time heals things. Sometimes time doesn't heal things. So I hope there's been some suggestions in there that might be helpful for you. The last one I'll say is that there are some people who do this somatic, like body work, and it's not really yoga therapy, but some people say that they're like, pressure points in your muscles and your fascia, the stuff that the fascia is like, it's like, thick stuff that kind of sheaths the muscles in and like connective tissue in your body, basically. And they can get kind of stuck like knots in a rubber band. And so for some people, massage or myofascial release therapy, which is basically like pressing down on those points, it'll hurt, but then letting off the pressure and the blood comes back in and it relaxes that part and heals it. Some people even say that there's points in the pelvic floor that, like a lot of points in the pelvic floor, where people store tension and trauma, and that those can be manipulated in order to treat things like vaginismus, vaginismus is when women, like the vagina sort of locks down if anything tries to penetrate it.
Sure.
And it can be a response to trauma, like involuntary penetration. And so some people are like, I've heard interviews with these like somatic body workers that try to go in and like, touch those pressure points and combine it with like a safe environment to get people's pelvic muscles to relax. So that might be something to look into. I'm pretty sure there's only a few people in the world who do that. They're probably in the Bay Area of California. But I mean, look around and explore if that's something that's, that affects you. Now, if you think you have sexual trauma, but you don't know what it was, that's another thing to think about. I've heard, I've known a couple of people personally who said, who realized as an adult that they were experiencing symptoms of PTSD and trauma, and they weren't sure why. They didn't have any memories that would have led them to that. But then they uncovered some memories somehow through therapy or through thinking about it, or it just came flooding back to them or something, of incest. And then they went down the road of reading about it and trying to explore, okay, what happened and how can I heal from this? Right. And it's a long process for some people. But reading about it helps whatever specific area of trauma you have. Your partner reading about it, if you have a partner, could also be very helpful. Yeah, because they'll understand it. Yep. Yeah. And they can act as that compassionate witness a little bit more. In addition to a therapist, if you have one. Yeah, I mean, when you read about something, it brings it into the light more, out of the shadows. It makes it a known thing, and it validates that other people have gone through this too. You weren't the only one, and the reactions you've had to it are normal symptoms of trauma. There's nothing wrong with you, and it's not your fault, even though you may have been told it was your fault.
Sure.
Abusive relationship is another type of trauma.
Yep.
A lot of people are in relationships with very selfish people to the point where they could be considered kind of like narcissistic or sociopathic, who just treat them like shit and take from them. They're like emotionally drained. Everybody recharges their batteries differently, but, spending time in nature can be very healing. Spending time alone, reading about it, reading about healthy relationships. So, yeah, I guess that was a little disjointed, but that was totally just off the top of my head. I hope there's some helpful suggestions in there. I'd be curious to hear from people who have like healed from sexual trauma and what they did and how that worked for them. Because again, like I said, well, I don't know what the question asker experienced specifically.
Right.
I have had some sexual trauma. I would say it's not to the level of the big ones, like child abuse and things like that. But I mean, yeah, like, of course, being a woman in the world, you're going to experience a lot of just being treated really shitty and being in situations where you're pressured into sex, situations where you feel like you don't have any worth unless you give up sex or something like that.
Yeah.
I've had experiences like that. And how did I heal from them? Well, reading about feminism.
Sure.
Spending time alone, doing yoga, going for walks in the woods, talking to other women who experience similar stuff, kind of group therapy, seeking out understanding partners, working on my self-esteem, building up, like my sense of self-worth and boundaries. Establishing boundaries is a big one.
Yeah.
Especially for people pleasers. People have trouble saying no
Yep.
to stuff. You got to figure out why that is and why and how you can change it.
Yeah.
A lot of people, when they experience sexual trauma, a common symptom or response to that is a change in body weight, like gain a bunch of weight or to lose a bunch of weight. Some people develop eating disorders. Maybe that's about control or about I don't know what, or about punishing yourself. Some people gain a bunch of weight because honestly, when you're a kid, especially a woman in the world, and people are looking at you in a predatory way and perhaps even preying on you, one of the only things you can do to defend yourself is to make yourself look unattractive to them, unappealing to them. And so sometimes people just gain a bunch of weight. It's also like insulation from the world, to be carrying around a lot of excess body fat. It's like a protective layer from everybody else in the world, and you're walling yourself off a little bit. And so understanding that and perhaps making some lifestyle changes to have a healthier lifestyle so that you get back to more of a normal weight can be healing in itself too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I threw out a lot of things there, but again, I hope there's something helpful.
Yeah. No. That's great.
And I'd be curious to hear, like, how did I do, hear from other people who have more experience with these things and want to add their voices to it as well. I'll listen to it.
Absolutely. So yeah, I don't really feel qualified, to even answer that question. Some of what you described, like reenactment and all that, that's something that I've been intrigued by that some virtual reality companies are talking about, like very much. And I've said this countless times on Sovryn Tech that therapy is going to be the killer app, as it were, for virtual reality, and just nobody knows it yet. And it'll become a big deal, gaming is going to be the Trojan horse, but once the technology gets there, that's going to be huge. In my opinion, that might be able to help people, because like you said, there's a lot of different options here. I know there's people who say that they get into self-defense, strength training and things like that to prevent it from ever happening again.
Yep.
Like I said, I don't really feel qualified talking about it. I will say I think that's a far more valid route than just buying a gun to protect yourself, because I think a gun for most people is a false sense of security. It's a false sense of power. It's a red panic button that offloads the situation that's happening to you to somebody, to something, to a technology, to something else. And
a gun can turn into a security blanket for sure. Yeah. And could be a false sense, but when we're talking about self-defense, it doesn't just have to be physical self-defense.
Right.
You could get into emotional self-defense.
Yes.
Learning how to establish firm boundaries, or recognizing abusive behavior and red flags so that you don't let it get too far.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So a lot of possibilities on how to go about this. So that's all that I'm, gonna add in myself on that. But go ahead.
How about as far as how to be a supportive partner if your partner has sexual trauma? How do you think would be a good way to be a supportive partner?
Ask questions.
Yeah,
all the
exactly
time.
What I was going to say.
Make sure and even the question over and over again, and it doesn't matter if it's annoying. It's better that you're annoying than that you're disrespectful or that you're triggering or re-traumatizing or something. To say, is it okay? Is this okay right now? And if you get anything, I mean, this is true for all kinds of situations. If you get anything less than enthusiastic consent, fucking stop.
Mm-hmm.
Just stop. And you know what? I mean, even if it's during sex things, I mean, just be aware, and don't have that. I mean, that's the thing with today. That's kind of a problem, is that I feel like an old man saying this. There's nothing wrong with one night stands and hooking up and all that shit. Like, fine, that's okay. But like, if you're in the dating scene, you're looking to get into a relationship with somebody, okay? Like, having sex on the second date, that might be kind of crazy. I think that might be, because what you don't know, especially if you're somebody that's like really, this sounds so judging of a lot, and I don't mean it to be, but if you're at a certain level of self-awareness, I assume you want to ask people, hey, have you ever, because it's weird to have that conversation on the second date saying, have you ever been raped? Have you, do you have any sexual traumas in your past?
Yeah.
I think that's a terrible thing to, pretty much to do. But then at the same time, I mean, sex that night could turn into something terrible if you're somebody of like high self-awareness. Now, if it's the run-of-the-mill, conventional person, you met at the bar, blah, 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 and you're looking for a date, and that's why you went to the bar. Okay, you're going to have sex on the second date. Who gives a shit, right? Because, I mean, you're just, you're one of the... You're one of the mup-runs. Right? I don't know. I hate to put it that way.
You could still run across a trigger that way. I mean, and you could end up being really confused because you could take someone home from the bar and you're just doing your normal sexual stuff. And all of a sudden they start breaking down into tears. And you're like, what happened? What did I do wrong? Well, maybe it's nothing about you. Maybe you ran across one of that person's triggers.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm just saying that, like, I don't know. I hate to even talk this way because it sounds like elitism or something, and I really don't mean it to be. But like, if you really want that deep connection while having sex, and it's a relationship that you plan on going on for a while. I mean, this is why I have the problem with like just meeting people for the purposes of having a relationship. Fucking be friends first. Have that friendship. Then you can learn all this stuff as friends. You can be there for them as friends. You can help them, and understand them as friends. Yeah, you can
decide if they're actually someone you want to date.
Right. And then when it gets to that next level, this isn't a problem. Or at least it's one that you're aware of. And I hate to even use the word problem. But that's the speed dating shit, I just meeting people for the purposes of dating and never knowing them beforehand. I personally have such issues with that. Like, I mean, that's just me, and that's my opinion.
Yeah.
And I keep it as my opinion.
No,
and it's
I'm with
not
you.
fact.
I have to get to know somebody.
Yeah. I mean, again, if you want to do a hookup, okay, that's a very different situation. This is shallow from stem to stern. And so, yeah, you're not going to get into your traumas. You're not going to get into the shit like that. Of course, I understand.
Well,
that.
you won't get into them on purpose, but they may creep up on you.
They may still, yes, of course. But I'm just saying that that's not part of the program. Like, that's not what this is about. I'm saying when you're trying to like find somebody to spend the rest of your life with, I recommend a different path.
Like taking it slow and getting to know each other.
Being friends, hanging out, having that foundation, then it can really last because you're friends first.
I think
you can be friends
a
after.
lot of people would be surprised to hear you say that because you're always all about like, woo, get it on, sex, orgies, blah, blah, blah. But no, you're actually saying get to know somebody if you want the deep connection.
Yeah. I mean, well, because again, there's surface level sex, then there's like serious sex. I mean, there's different kinds of sex. So yeah, well, anyway, I'm putting it out there. So, all right, how about we get into some fun stuff?
All right,
let's change it up.
You told me we have like 6 or 7 more questions.
And we've got a lot.
We'll see how many we get to.
Yeah, I don't know if we're going to be able to get to all of them.
Okay, I'll try to be less verbose.
Oh, no. I thought that was very important information that people won't hear in many places. Okay, so let's see. Well, I guess kind of while we're talking about relationships, do you have any advice for someone adding in another woman to a relationship that has been hetero for years?
Oh boy. So, there's a lot to unpack here.
Yeah.
Okay,
so this is a guy, a guy, gal.
Mm-hmm.
relationship
Yep.
that's been going on for years. They want to add in another woman. Do you have any advice?
First, I want to ask, do they have a particular woman in mind, or are they looking for a woman who wants to join their hetero relationship?
Let me look at the bigger question.
Okay.
But it looks like, okay, so, oh, for fuck's sake. Sorry, when I was going through, a notification came up and it said some goofball had a page. I want you to like the page. I love Kratom. And it's not anybody that listens to this show, so you know who I'm talking about when I say that. But it's just some idiot celebritarian, and I just want to anyway, that gave me very bad thoughts. Fucking loser. Anyway, okay, so sorry. So it appears that there is somebody that they have in mind.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I was about to rip them a new asshole because the language, it sounded like they were saying, okay, everybody wants to add another woman
This is
into
coming
their
from
relationship.
a woman.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, then I misunderstood.
Yeah,
I
that's okay.
totally thought it was a hetero couple that was a unicorn hunter. And the reason they're called unicorn hunter is because they're on the prowl for a hot, single, bisexual woman who's going to come into their relationship and just fit in perfectly and be equally in love with both of them and only have sex with both of them and not disrupt their existing relationship. She doesn't exist, folks. That's why it's called a unicorn. It's a fantasy. And that's why there's so many more unicorn hunters than there are unicorns.
Yeah.
Because there just aren't that many hot, single, bisexual women who are willing to put up with all kinds of shit from a heterosexual established couple.
Just wait for the sex robots, folks.
So anyway, it sounds like, okay, the woman's writing this email.
Yes.
Right? Score point 1. Okay.
Yep.
They have another woman in mind that they want to be in a triad with.
Yes.
Score number 2, because you already got somebody. You're not looking.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now, I would say, how does the third woman feel about this? Is she interested in being part of your world? Part of your
wonder and free.
Anyway,
I want to be where the people aren't.
I want to be where the heterosexual unicorn hunters are. Just kidding. Assuming that she's on board with it too, and they're just looking for tips on how to sort of get it off the ground, I would say just start by all three of you spending a lot of time together.
Mm-hmm.
Also, start by the established couple having your issues worked out already.
Yeah.
You don't want to be in bed with this new woman because, threesomes can bring out a lot of feelings and emotions. You don't want to be in bed with this woman and suddenly a fight breaks out.
Yeah.
Somebody feels jealous or somebody feels left out or somebody says, well, you did this to me last week and we never talked about it. And there's nothing that ruins the mood more than that.
Yeah,
So
I think I think this is true for maybe slightly older couples or things like this that are unicorn hunters, where the same reason that a lot of people have children, which is they expect this new person to enter the relationship and fix
everything.
the problems in the relationship itself.
No,
you
they're
fix
not
your shit first.
Yeah,
and then you can bring somebody in. Now, I mean, I want to say that I think in not even just a perfect world, but because it's possible in this world, I would hope that maybe the third person, that the unicorn, shall we say, would recognize that she would feel an attraction to this couple anyway, because she recognizes, these people have their shit together.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm interested in this.
Yeah.
But
and maybe that is the case because, I mean, otherwise they wouldn't have been able to find themselves in this situation unless they could attract somebody. So good for them.
Sure.
Maybe they do have a lot of their issues figured out. And of course, you can't be perfect. You can't have all your issues figured out. Things come up, fights happen, but try your best to have everything sorted and not have any major unresolved problems that are breakup worthy before you start dating another person.
I mean, there's always going to be little things, I guess, like that just plague forever. But people change. I mean, whatever's going on. But the big stuff, make sure you got that licked.
Yeah. And I mean, if anything comes up, during this whole process where the third person is building a relationship with the other two people, I mean, everybody has to communicate with each other. Some of those relationships are going to be new. Some are going to be more established, but everybody has to talk to each other. And also, I think it really helps to not look at that third person as somehow inferior, because it's really easy for them to feel left out. You know, it's like they're joining an established couple. They might feel like, oh my God, I can never compete with their relationship that they already have had going strong for 10 years or however long.
Yeah.
So, I mean, be inclusive. Don't treat them like they're a second-class citizen. Like they have to do what you want, what the couple wants. They're not like submissive necessarily to the couple, unless you're into that. Unless you've established that as a dynamic on purpose.
Right.
They shouldn't necessarily be thought of as second best to the established couple or treated as such. They are their own person with their own free will. And they are in this relationship voluntarily, and it's up to you to create an environment where they want to stay with you voluntarily.
Yeah, I think for a unicorn coming in new to this relationship, like if 100% new, she wasn't dating like either of them beforehand or something, or what didn't have a relationship. Like one of the, be empathetic to the unicorn, because they, whether they're conscious or unconsciously aware of this, are probably thinking, oh shit, I've got to like be my best for two people, and like I've got to make sure this person's pleased and this person's pleased, blah blah blah.
There can be a lot of expectations to live up to.
Exactly. As to where the original couple, like they already have years of working through stuff and a lot of shorthand and everything that maybe they feel like, yeah, well, okay, so I don't have to shave anymore, or I don't have to do this, or whatever. As where the unicorn could feel quite differently, because this is new for them, and so they're coming in with a lot of new energy, not woo, just just an abstract term, new energy and all of that. You want to really be, in my opinion, you want to be very respectful of that and understand that, and as much as you can, like, comfort them, and saying like, look, it's okay, and
yeah. That's a great piece of advice, Brian, is just try as much as possible not to place any expectations on the unicorn.
Yeah.
Like, for example, some couples who are like heterosexual established couples who want to open their relationship or practice polyamory or something. Yeah. Maybe they have it in their heads that one person can't always meet all the other person's. One person can't always be the end-all, be-all in a relationship, right? Right. You can't get all your needs met necessarily by one person, and it's unrealistic to think that. Okay, maybe some poly people have that mindset, but then they might expect the unicorn to come in and fulfill all the needs that are missing from their current partner. Yes. Yeah. Right? Or one person might meet the unicorn, say the woman in the couple meets another woman, starts to fall in love with her, and then says, hey, why don't you come join my relationship, right? Yeah. And she has much stronger feelings for the woman in the couple than the guy in the couple. Or maybe she has stronger feelings for the guy than the woman. That might be an issue, but feelings can't be controlled in that way. If you have expectations that the unicorn is going to love both of you the same or in the same way or the same amount, or that she's only going to have sex with both of you at the same time, those are really kind of unfair expectations. Would you like it if somebody put those expectations on you?
Not at all.
No, I don't think so. So my final piece of advice for this person is there's a great little series called Unicorn Land.
Yes.
It's a series of shorts, and it's great little filmmaking. It's about the experiences of a woman who decides that she's going to be a unicorn, and she goes and meets all these different couples and all these different people and has lots of threesomes with them, lots of dates and experience and stuff like that, and all the mishaps that happen. The first episode, she tries to have a threesome with this couple, and it ends up with the couple fighting, and she's just sitting there awkwardly on the couch. Yeah. So definitely watch Unicorn Land. It'll give you a lot of empathy for the perspective of an actual unicorn and some of the issues that they might encounter when they're trying to date couples, and then hopefully that'll help you avoid some of those issues. Yeah,
I mean, I guess my last piece of advice would be similar to its advice I'd given any, just couples relationship, let alone, triad or anything. And that is, like, make sure you're all individuals, like that like you can handle alone time and that you can, you have your own shtick, and that's missing. Too many people define themselves by their relationship. I mean, in many ways, I certainly, and I imagine the feeling goes both ways. I mean, like, you and I are kind of defined by our relationship in many ways. And
we're kind of a power couple, but we are individuals. We each have our own projects that we do by ourselves. We have separate opinions on many things.
Right.
We don't always agree with each other 100%.
Yeah.
Which is why I get annoyed when people attribute your opinions to me and vice versa.
Well, I mean, we get both sides, right? Because like there's people who say that who only think of us together. Yeah. But then there's people who say it's like, so who will ask you, in fact, this has happened. Well, they'll ask you, it's like, are you actually still, and this is somebody who isn't trying to hit on you. We'll say, hey,
are you and Brian still together?
Are you and Brian still together? Because like you're both.
I would have thought you'd breaking up by now.
Well, they don't say that, but they say like, because you ask, well, yeah, why? And they say because, well, you're both are like so doing your own thing so much. When we're actually together all the time.
Yeah, we are.
It's just that we have. I don't mean to. This isn't meant to be like a boast or something, but I think we both have that strength of individual character.
Yeah, definitely.
That shines.
We're both very independent.
Yeah,
and I think we've struck a really good balance between. Being a couple and being together, and also having our own lives and our own stuff that we do,
right?
Each as individuals.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think getting to that point, knowing who you are and what you want, and being able to answer those couple of questions, I think is pretty important. So
I think a lot of people have that experience of like kind of losing themselves in a relationship.
Yeah.
Where they become part of a couple and they just lose their identity, and nobody wants to do that. A lot of people get out of relationships for that reason, to find themselves again.
Yeah. Go ahead.
And yeah, like I think even in multiple person relationships, you got to be even more careful of that because they take up a lot of time.
Yeah.
And before you know it, you can be spending a full-time job and a half communicating with all of your different partners. And then you're like, wait a second, I've got no time to do my painting that I like to do and things like that.
Yeah. I mean, this is something I'm personally like hyper aware of, and that, whether I'm in a triad or just, it's just you and me, whatever it is, like I make it a point to like, I have this is not my saying. A lot of people say it, do what you do. And that means like, go, I mean, like I really want like people to be able to go do their thing, and that like, because people consciously or unconsciously, they can get lost in a relationship. And I don't want that to happen to anybody. I don't want that to happen to anybody I'm in love with. I just don't want that to be a thing.
Because then who do you love?
Right.
Where's the person you fell in love with?
Yeah. I fell in love with the individual who does, their own thing and what they do. Or, I mean, maybe they do the same thing as me, but at the same time, like they have their own unique reactions and everything to it. And so you want to, I think in any relationship, you want to help foster that for each other.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, go ahead.
One final tip.
All right.
For this person. I'm sorry, it's going longer than I thought, but this is good. This is a good topic. One final tip. If either you or her, if this is your first lesbian relationship, if you've never been with a woman before in a relationship, take a little bit of time to educate yourself about some of the issues that female couples face.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of issues. It's not simple and straightforward like dating a man.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is not the dynamics between women, because those can vary, right? And gender is fluid and all that stuff. And what I mean is the discrimination that you'll face.
Yep.
The way that people will look at you, the way that people will assume that you couldn't be a couple, you must be friends. They won't acknowledge you as a couple necessarily. Guys will come up and hit on you if it's just two women together and you look remotely feminine. Guys will come up and assume that you want their presence there, that they are giving you a gift with their maleness being there.
Right.
When maybe you don't want another guy there. You just want to be alone. It's really hard. There's a saying of two women together are never alone.
Yeah.
And that's because guys constantly come up and try to talk to them, be around them, things like that. People will make comments to you of like, oh, are you having a lesbian experience? Like, oh, this couldn't possibly be a serious relationship. It must be a phase or something that you're going through. Your family might be less than accepting. I don't know about your family situation, but that might be something you have to come out to your family. You might have to do things like keep your nails cut short if you're, touching each other's
part of
sensitive
being a good lesbian,
bits,
right? Isn't that the saying?
Yeah, I mean, so there's just some things that you have to think of, some considerations that you may not have ever encountered before just being in relationships with men.
Yeah. Yeah. And my last piece of advice for the men, or for the guy in this situation, keep you, and I say this a lot on like Sex and Science Hour or wherever else, just take your dick out of the equation. Like really don't think about it. If they want it, they will ask for it. They'll let you know. Believe me. Just, that's not saying you can't be a part of what's going on. I'm just saying, don't make it about your fucking dick. Like just let that go. Okay.
Women have so much trouble. Like the socialization of women is such that they're trained and conditioned to put themselves last in every situation, to not ask for pleasure, to not be a burden, to always be cognizant of the other person's needs, especially if it's a man, to make the man feel good, to stroke his ego and never mind my feelings. They're over here. So don't contribute to that. Support your girlfriends having pleasure themselves, and put yourself second. Don't encourage that dynamic where it's all about you.
Right. Exactly. So, and actually that's great advice, even if you're just in a duo.
I agree. I completely agree.
Sex is so much more than PIV.
And before you say, oh my God, that sounds so misandrist, you guys must hate men. No, we don't hate men. We're just aware of gender issues.
Yeah.
And personally, I will only date, the only men I would consider dating are ones that are also aware of gender issues and the dynamics that play out, and that encourage and support me as a person to not be second class, to be equally as important, to be treated with respect and dignity, and be recognized and be seen as a person in every way.
Yeah. If not more so in my book. So, yeah.
Sometimes you have to err on the side of more so because the default in society is less so.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. So,
anyway,
I'm sure we'll get questions about that. Let's see. Let's get on. Here's a simple one. And this one I really shortened because I'm not going to read the whole goddamn thing. This one's just for fun, I think. And the person's just doing this for kicks. Big breasts or little breasts?
I couldn't possibly choose.
I know, it's a false dichotomy.
They both have advantages.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love them all. It doesn't,
It's more about the person they're attached to, I think.
Sure.
But yeah, they both can be really beautiful and fun to play with. And,
I have absolutely no preference on the matter. It's all about the person.
And by the way, if you're with the same woman for long enough, or the same person has breasts, you could experience all of the above.
Yeah, right.
Women's breasts change over a lifetime.
Yeah.
I personally have had small tits and big tits. I had double A, at one point. And I've had up to a D or double D. So,
Yeah, when you're eating. Yeah, when you start. Can I say this about when you started eating paleo?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, when you started eating paleo, we were just friends at the time. I think. But
I experienced a body fat redistribution.
Yes,
and,
right. You didn't put on.
I didn't put on any weight, but somehow I went from a B to a D cup in bra sizes. And when I said I had the double A or the A cup, that was at a time when I had very low body fat, when I was concentrating a lot on physical fitness and an athletic performance. And so I had 6-pack abs too. So, you can't, basically, nature doesn't really let you have 6-pack abs and big tits at the same time. So it's kind of like pick one or the other. But that was definitely the case for me. So I've had little ones and I've had big ones.
Yeah, but just on a diet, it changed. Yeah. I mean, and a lot of other women have reported this.
Yep.
It's not.
When they're lactating, pregnant, after pregnancy, they change,
Sure.
So
okay. All right. So that was an easy one to answer. Do you either of you do any workouts specifically for sex? I'll start this off.
Oh.
No. I mean, I just don't. But working out in general is beneficial to sex for a multitude of reasons.
Yeah. Oh. Cardiovascular fitness is huge. Yeah.
Right. I mean, there's chemical reasons, physiological reasons that you can describe. There's also the psychological reasons, in just that you look good. You like looking good naked. You like being naked more.
You have more energy.
And you have more energy. I mean, there's a whole lot for it. No, I I know there's those guys that talk about kind of like your tantric yoga folk that talk about squeezing your
the pelvic floor muscles.
The pelvic floor muscles and all that. I don't generally engage in that. I get it. They talk about how you can just do it on a bus. You can just be squeezing it, like do a 40 count or something.
Yep.
And you're squeezing it. I mean, but I don't really, that's not something I consciously do or anything along those lines.
Yeah, I was going to say those pelvic floor exercises are the ones that I would think of as being specifically for sex. And that's something that I feel I should do more of.
Sure.
I narrated an audiobook called Pelvic Yoga, which is about combining yoga exercises with pelvic floor exercises. And I tried a couple of them, and it was a brutal workout.
Yeah, right.
So, I mean, I get it. Some people need to rehab their pelvic floor because they've been through childbirth or something, or they just got weak muscles, and they need to do those exercises. I don't quite have that motivation. But I feel like just in general, whenever I'm working out, especially when it's jumping or running or whatever, you're going to get some pelvic floor exercise just by virtue of working out.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I mean, again, like for me, but of course this isn't everybody. And I recognize that. I mean, like sex is a really important deal to me. So sure. Part of the reason that I work out so hard and so often and as much as I do and all that is to have, for whatever varying reasons, a much better time doing my favorite thing, which is, having sex. So yeah, it's all kind of, in a way,
all related.
It's all for part of that reason, but nothing specific. No. Yeah.
I will say, have you ever heard of this whole coregasm thing?
No.
Okay. So that is the phenomenon of, I guess it's mostly women, but it can happen to men too.
Okay.
Where people can have an orgasm from doing ab exercises.
Whoa.
And it can happen to women at the gym.
Oh, I'm looking into this now. All right.
So I heard about
Tab
this
a
couple of years ago. And you know what I found? It's actually true. When there's a Pilates move, not that you're just doing abs and then all of a sudden you're like,
We're doing a lot more abs workouts.
Not that that's how it really works, but for me, what I find is that if you're able to activate the transversus abdominis, which is, it's like a belt that goes around your midsection. Like everybody has that muscle, right?
Okay.
It's just an abdominal muscle. And Pilates trains you to activate that muscle. So does yoga, or when yoga and Pilates are combined, they often train you to activate that muscle. And I find that if I activate it during sex, I have an orgasm much faster. Because it must create some kind of pressure on my G-spot or something like that, or it presses on I don't know what it presses on. Maybe the nerves or the clitoris or the internal parts of it. I don't know. But all I know is that when I engage that muscle, if I'm having, sex, I will come a lot faster.
Oh, okay. All right.
So I think there's some truth to it.
Okay. All right.
So, I noticed that when I'm concentrating a lot on yoga and Pilates exercises, I'm able to do that more during sex and get that benefit more easily. So
let me ask this then. Is this what could possibly cause, because there's women who orgasm during childbirth. Is this related?
So the orgasmic birth thing, as I understand it, it's not related. It's
okay.
It's
all right.
As I understand it, the whole orgasmic birth thing is basically not that you're giving birth and you're having an orgasm, but that you can rub the clitoris to kind of distract from the pain of labor, as well as if the baby's head is kind of pushing through the birth canal, it's going to really activate the G-spot, almost like being fisted.
Gotcha.
And so if you kind of, play with your clit during that time, then it could not only relieve the pain, but it could cause some kind of orgasmic experience, I guess, meditative experience. The uterus is contracting anyway because it's trying to push the baby out, which is what happens during orgasms. So the two are kind of close together in some ways. So that's
Okay.
how I understand the whole orgasmic birth thing.
Okay. So, but they're not related. That's what I was curious about.
I doubt you could really do much of that as a pregnant woman because the abdominal muscles kind of separate to accommodate the pregnancy, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not supposed to do ab exercises really while pregnant, like sit-ups, definitely not.
Sure. Okay. All right. I guess we'll do one last one here because it's like 4:00. So, all right, this is a nice one. What's the sexiest thing you've ever said to each other?
Oh my God.
So I can answer first if you want.
Yeah, you go first.
I know because I'm the one that compressed this, so I've thought about it. So the sexiest thing you ever said to me that like just drove me absolutely nuts. I mean, and we're not talking about like bedroom talk necessarily. I mean, though it could be. I mean, there's key words that can happen while fucking that will definitely take me to the next level. When this is sort of when we first started going out, but you had said, I want to run away with you.
Oh,
like that. Yeah. I mean, like on so many levels, it was hot. It was sweet. It said so much, just this notion I had kind of like said something similar to you that maybe inspired you to say something like that. I don't know, but like that just checked. And I'm sure you remember when you said it to me. In fact, I can specifically remember you texted it to me. Actually, it wasn't even something that you said, that you verbalized. I was driving in a roundabout in Keene when you had texted me saying that. And it was just, wow. And yeah, but like it encapsulates so much of like, no, you know what? I just want to leave the whole world behind with you, just leave it all behind. And it's, and yeah, anytime anybody's ever like intimated anything like that to me, oh God, that just, and when you sent that to me, I just, that was something. So definitely the sexiest, as well as everything else. Like it's also a very loving statement. It's all kinds, it's not just sexy. So that's what did it for me. If you don't have an answer like that, that's totally fine.
No, I do. I mean, you say so many things to me that give me the warm fuzzies, but and make me feel love. But one of my favorites is when you say that me asking you out or expressing that I liked you or had feelings for you changed everything. Like you wouldn't have even considered being in a relationship with anyone.
Oh, yeah.
But me coming to you and saying I wanted a relationship with you, that just, you had to change your whole outlook. Like that was, you would never turn that down,
Yeah. I mean, and
even though you wouldn't have wanted a relationship with anybody else.
Yeah. And you knew because we were friends for so long beforehand that I was not interested like in a relationship or any, or that like I wasn't looking for one.
Yeah.
And yeah, but yeah. So you asked and I was like, well, you know what? Like otherwise I probably wouldn't have done this. So, yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's nice. So that's kind of a nice note, I think, to end on maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that. Sure.
That's good.
Let's go say some more sexy things to each other.
Yeah. How about we do that before Star Trek starts?
Oh, yeah.
That is, few things are as sexy as Star Trek. I mean, Star Trek is just, it does it for me.
Oh, yeah. Me too.
Put a gal in a Starfleet uniform and I am, I'm gone. I am just, my brain is mush. All right. So that's it. Stephanie, thank you so much for being on.
Thanks,
we actually
Brian.
had a lot
That
more
was
questions.
Really fun.
Yeah, we had more to get into, but we'll get into them another time. Maybe we'll do another one of these. And you can send in your questions and I'll store them up. If you want to send them into bbs@sovryntech.com, that's my email address. That is, just real quick, if anybody's been using like any of my older email addresses, over the lifetime of Sovryn Tech, I've changed providers here and there for varying reasons. That is the one. So if you want to make sure that, and it's not going to go anywhere. So if you want to contact me, that's the best email address, bbs@sovryntech.com. So anyway, again, yes, thank you, Stephanie. And, hey, we'll see, you can listen to more of us on Sex and Science Hour at sexandsciencehour.com.
Woohoo!
And you will see us on the other side.